There's increased threats to judges, like physical and safety threats. There's been an attack on judges.
How important it is for young people to seek out good mentors.
At the courthouse, I have a summer program where I hire and bring on law school students, and we spend a summer working on their lawyering skills.
Sometimes women hesitate to take up space, especially when it comes to leadership positions.
We're also raising children at the same time, and so it becomes extremely difficult for women to take on additional leadership roles. We're at a point in time in history where every single person needs to reevaluate what they're doing.
What are the challenges future attorneys, lawyers are going to face? And I guess at the same time, because there's a flip side to the coin, what are the opportunities? Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Community Connect. This is Fatima Aslam. Today, we are very lucky to have with us Judge Rabeea Collier. She's a proud Houstonian, a community leader, and the presiding judge of 113th District Court. We are very lucky to have her here in the studio with us to talk about her journey and share some lessons from her life.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Rabeea, before, you've achieved a lot in your life, and, before we kind of delve into that, I'd love to ask you, how did you get interested in the field of law? And, what was your childhood like?
Well, it goes back to high school, actually. I had an opportunity to join the debate club. And when I did that, I just fell in love with it. And so I, at a very young age, knew that I wanted to become a lawyer. So I was really blessed in that way because I know that a lot of times people don't know what they want to do in high school. And they figure it out in college or even after college, but at a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah, so Rabeea, tell us where you went for law school and what was that experience like for you?
So I started off my undergrad in Austin at the University of Texas.
Yeah.
And after I graduated, I immediately went to law school. I came back to Houston. I was born and raised in Houston. And I went to Texas Southern University, Thurgood Marshall School of Law.
So how was your experience over there? Were there any organizations that you were involved in during law school? And, what did you decide to do post-law school?
Well, I loved law school. I loved my time there. Coming from UT Austin, being such a large campus and so many students, it was so nice coming to a school that was so small. Most law schools are small, right?
Yeah.
It's a graduate program. But TSU, Thurgood Marshall, was like a family. I know that many law school students probably feel that way because after your first year, you feel like you've been through war together.
Yeah.
Being a lawyer, I'm sure you can relate. But I had a fabulous time. I joined many organizations. I worked with the American Bar Association as the representative for our school. I also had some leadership roles for various class positions.
Yeah. So Rabeea, for our audience that is watching and maybe some aspiring lawyers, what would you tell them? Like, how should they make good use of law school? And, what can they do to prepare themselves for a good career in law?
So I think it depends on the age range.
Right.
So I have folks talk to me about becoming a lawyer all the way from like high school, college, and even after college. So I would say if you're in high school, I think joining any organization that allows you to work on your reading, writing, or speaking skills is very helpful. To college students, I always encourage them to pursue their passion, and it doesn't have to mean that you are pigeonholed into a political science or government degree. That's what I did.
Yeah.
I have a government degree, but I know that, so many of the students now have various passions, and you should go into marketing if you think marketing that's of interest to you, or a hard science, because quite frankly, that will look better on your law school application than the hundreds of people that have a degree in government or political science like I had.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But, you've obviously served, as an attorney, and you are currently one, and you're serving as a judge. What do you think makes a good lawyer?
Oh, that's a great question. I think a lawyer that has very good listening skills and analytical skills. I think those are really important. And I guess I didn't talk about individuals that may go to law school as a second career in life.
Mm-hmm.
So the advice I would have for them would be to really, when you're in law school, try to get as much exposure and experience as possible.
Okay.
Just because it's important to not just go into law school thinking, okay, this is what I want to do, because you never know. That may not be the area that you want to end up in. A lot of my summer interns at the courthouse, I tell them, how many opportunities do you have? And only give my court half a summer, because you're going to choose the other half somewhere else. Whether it's another court or a law firm or a corporation, I want you to get that experience and exposure, because the more exposure you have, the better the lawyer you're going to be.
Right. And that's great advice. So, Rabeea, I also want to ask, for our audience that may not know, how are judges elected? What's the process? And also, personally to you, what was that moment when you decided, to go for it?
So that's a lot. You've hacked a lot in that question. Let me see if I can answer all of those questions. So in Texas, our state district judges and our county judges are elected. And that's not to be confused with the county judge.
Okay.
So the county judge is not actually in the judicial branch of government. They don't preside over a court of law. They preside over commissioner's court. And that's not in the judicial branch. They're kind of like the mayor of the county. But so the county judges, I know it's a little confusing, but in Texas, they're just called the county judge, which is the mayor of the county. But county judges and district judges are all elected.
Okay.
And so we have to run on a campaign cycle, either the president's years or the midterm elections. And it's a 4-year term that you're elected for. And I initially ran in 2016. I had 3 people in the Democratic primary, so I was one of 3 people. Myself and another judge who is the current judge, who ultimately won, got into a primary runoff in 2016. It was the first time I had ever run, and I was excited about winning into the runoff, but I came a little short. I think I lost with 5,000 votes or so, and I came up short and I didn't win. Then before the 2018 election, my husband and I talked about potentially running again. And there were community members that had asked, are you going to run again? And so in my discussions with my husband, I told him that it was too much of a sacrifice, and it was too much work, campaigning, practicing law, because when you're a candidate, you still have a job, and you're still practicing law. And so I told him, I don't think we should do it. It was a lot of work and sacrifice to me, personally, professionally, family-wise, but he really encouraged me to do it. He said that the community invested a lot in the campaign, and he thought that I should try it one more time. And so I entered the race in 2018, and alhamdulillah, we won the Democratic primary and then the general election, and I've been on the bench since, and I was re-elected in 22 and now up for re-election for the 3rd time.
Yeah. Rabeea, obviously that was a great achievement, and also something that opened pathways for a lot of women. I think you were obviously the first South Asian judge in Harris County, right? And so how did that moment feel like? Because of course it was a personal celebration, but also recognizing what that meant in a historical perspective, right? How did you feel when you won?
So I want to make sure that we have it right. So South Asian woman in Harris County, because there was Judge Sandel, who is a South Asian man who was on the bench, served in the 127th District Court. But I was the first South Asian woman. And it was amazing, to say the least. I was very proud. It was important in 2018 that the campaign really spoke to, what does Harris County look like?
Yeah.
What representation do we want on the bench? And I was just so proud of Harris County to make sure that we bridged the gap between, what Harris County looks like and what the judiciary looked like. And we did an amazing job, I think, as a party and as a community.
Yeah. And why do you feel like, representation of different communities is important, especially in the judicial system?
I think, the reason why we have, in every industry, we say that having different and diverse experiences, backgrounds, make for a better result. So whether that's in the boardroom or whether that's in a classroom, whether that's in a hospital, whether that's in a courthouse, especially those that serve the community, we need to make sure that individuals trust the judicial branch. The way that we resolve disputes is like no other in the world. And when the public loses trust in the system, that becomes problematic for democracy. And when you can see yourself or a member of your community a part of the institution, a part of the government, you then begin to trust the system a little bit more. So there's an aspect of trust, and then there's also an aspect of a better result in the fact that you now have members of the judiciary that make up diverse backgrounds. And it's not necessarily just race, ethnicity, gender, but it's also experiences and socioeconomic status, immigration status. There's all sorts of things that make up who we are. And I think when you bring us all together, we as judges learn from one another. I had an amazing opportunity. I was appointed to the curriculum committee and of the Texas Center for the Judiciary. I did that. It was a 3-year term, and it was a small group of judges, about 15 from across the state, and we developed education for all judges in Texas. And so when you elect community members, they can then teach others about cultural differences, religious differences, so that you may not be before the 113th, you may not come before me, but you may be in a court where they learned something about the Pakistani community or about the Muslim community, something different that may impact your life. And so that's why it's so important for voters to know who they're electing to represent them and who their leaders are within all the branches of government.
Yeah. But I want to ask you, what are challenges, that judges face? Like, what's difficult about being in a position like this?
So let me start off by saying I love my job.
Yes.
And it is a privilege to be there.
Of course.
But like all positions, obviously you have to also, you deal with the bad with the good, right? Yeah. So I will say some of the challenges are the political aspect of the position. Also, the tone in the country has been over the years, and the trend has been to, there's increased threats to judges, like physical and safety threats. There's been an attack on judges, and so the discourse in the country regarding judges has really tanked, unfortunately. So you have individuals that may disagree with the judge, but they're taking it now to the point where they're actually making personal attacks against the judge, rather than just saying, I disagree with the outcome or with the ruling, which is fair. We're all human. You may disagree with the judge, but to then, publish the judge's, home address or information about their children to kind of get the internet and all of the people to then start to potentially harass or threaten judges, that becomes an issue of our democracy, unfortunately.
Yeah. And, since you mentioned it, after all, like everyone, judges are humans. And, so how do you approach tough cases where perhaps, the law and the human side, collide? Like, if I may ask that question, like, what's the approach, or how does anyone approach a case like that? Maybe a tough case where, there's obviously the legal side, but then there's a human side as well.
So kind of like looking behind the curtain. I would say we have several tough cases.
Right, of course.
And I think that for me personally, what I have done is to really root myself in the Constitution and in the law and feeling comfort there. Because, and sometimes I've had to say it in the courtroom, that I am not a lawmaker, and you may be unhappy with the ruling, but unfortunately the law requires me to rule in this way. But you are more than welcome to go to Austin and try to get the laws changed. I'm a state judge, so mainly the laws that are applied in the 113th are Texas state laws. And so sometimes I've had to, in really emotional cases, I've had to mention that just so that people can have an understanding of what's happening in the courtroom. Because sometimes they may not understand, why is this judge ruling the way that she is? And sometimes I have to redirect them to, what is the law in this case? And what does the law allow me to do? Because I'm bound by that.
Right.
So sometimes I may not even personally agree with my ruling. Like if I was sitting in the audience and I wasn't the person that was having to apply the law to the facts, I would be unhappy.
Right.
But unfortunately, or fortunately, because the system works this way, is that we are supposed to be true to what the law is, and that's how I handle difficult cases. There have been a couple of very emotional cases where after I've ruled and gotten off the bench, I've cried about the ruling because of just the significance of the case and the impact to the family. Regardless of whether the family was happy or not, but just the impact and the significance of that particular case.
Thank you for sharing that insight. So Rabeea, we have a lot of young people that are watching this show. So I want to ask you some questions that will perhaps, give them some wisdom and share some lessons with them. So, what role has mentorship played in your life, and how important it is for young people to seek out good mentors in order to progress in their career, whatever career it is?
Mentors are essential. And so if someone does not have a mentor, they need to get one, regardless of age or where you're at in your career. You always have to have people around you that you can talk to about where you should be going next, what you should be accomplishing, what are your goals, and how can you accomplish those goals. So I would not limit my response to young folks.
Anyone.
I would say anyone at however many years you've been practicing in the industry that you may be working in. So yes, big proponent of getting a mentor, and then making sure it's the right mentor, making sure that there's a right fit. because that's also important. I've had some mentors that were great. Studies show that you have to ask women to run for office more times than you have to ask for a man.
Mm-hmm.
And many of my mentors filled all of those times where they asked me multiple times to run for office before I had the courage to run. And so whether you want to run for political office or get into law school or, get a promotion at work, mentorship is very important. So at the courthouse, I have a summer program where I hire and bring on law school students.
Right.
And we spend a summer working on their lawyering skills, making sure that they're going to be good lawyers when they graduate law school, but also a lot of conversations about what do you want to do and how do we get you to that point.
Right. Rabeea, like you just mentioned that, sometimes women hesitate to take up space, and especially when it comes to leadership positions. And, you have obviously throughout your life, taken many leadership positions, and you continue to do so. Obviously being a judge is just one of them, but you have several other leadership positions in the community. I mean, what would you say to any young woman watching? Firstly, why do women hesitate? And, how can we change that? And how can we as a community support women to take up more space?
Another packed question.
Yeah. However you want to answer it.
I think you phrased it beautifully about taking up space. I think that's exactly right. I think we need to make sure that we are taking the appropriate amount of space to make sure that things are getting done for our community. And the hesitation is years of, I think, for years, women were not in these roles and were not in these executive or leadership roles. And so I think we are slowly getting there, and we need to encourage one another. But we also have to be realistic. Many women have roles other than a professional role that they're balancing and juggling. I myself have 2 children and a husband, and so we have family obligations, and not just our immediate family. Many of us right now are sandwiched, and so we have, parents that are elder that we're having to take care of or be more active in, and then we're also raising children at the same time, and so it becomes extremely difficult for women to take on additional leadership roles. And so I think we can't leave that out of the conversation. It's so important that we recognize that in order for women to take up that space, we have to have support as a community, to make sure that women can really strive. But, we're at a point in time in history where every single person needs to reevaluate what they're doing and how are they contributing to leaving this world a more positive, a more kind place, and how are we raising our children to make sure that they are future leaders that can hopefully bring about peace in this world, because we are going into very scary times, and I think it will take real leadership from women and mothers to make sure that our children are raised in the right way.
Yeah. And, since you mentioned leadership, what are good qualities in a good leader? And obviously you just mentioned women, but I want to take it more broadly. What is a good community leader? What does that look like?
I think a leader is really a public servant.
Okay.
So one that is building community. A leader is someone that listens and develops a solution. So I think we as people need to be able to identify problems and then figure out a solution. I think a lot of times, our community is really good about identifying issues. Where we need to hone our skills will really be in being able to figure out what is the solution and then executing on that solution. I think leadership is really about that. And I spend a lot of time talking with my mentees and young folks about leadership, because you have got to learn how to build bridges and relationships to get things done. And you have to figure out, what do you want to get done?
Yeah.
There's so much in the world that a person can take on, and you've got to figure out, well, what will my contribution be, and how will I accomplish that?
Yeah, yeah. So Rabeea, you just mentioned, your mentees, the future generation of attorneys, or, ones that are young in this profession. What are the challenges that you think that they're facing? Like, what are the challenges future attorneys, lawyers are going to face? And I guess at the same time, because, there's a flip side to the coin, what are the opportunities for them, in the coming times?
I think the challenges that they face is that they live in a more digital world,
Right.
a world that doesn't necessarily only handle like social interaction in person.
Yeah.
They have a lot of interaction remotely and via social media. And so I think there's a lot of challenges with that, because there are social just norms that may not be being passed from generation to generation. And the more you interact in the business world, in the legal world, it's helpful, because you need to actually work in a building with other people. And so I think the challenges are making sure that you get those experiences. Otherwise, it's very difficult to know what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. One of the advantages that they have is that they have a strong understanding of work-life balance that my generation does not have. We tend to, I think, work more.
Yeah.
And we've understand the concept of paying your dues as a young lawyer, and really having a strong work ethic.
Right.
Versus this new generation that I've seen come into the courthouse. They have a very strong opinion about work-life balance.
Right.
That I've never seen before.
Right. Rabeea, you just mentioned technology. So, I want to ask this as attorney myself. Many people say that technology and AI are making life easier for lawyers, and, there's things you can get done faster. As a judge, does this quick, fast increase in technology, do you feel like there's any downsides to it? As an elected official, as a judge, as someone who deals with all kinds of cases all the time, what do you think is the pros and cons of technology taking over?
Well, I think the issue becomes when you don't know how to use the technology. That you only know how to use the technology. Right. You haven't developed the skills on your own. And so I would say we see problems when lawyers don't do the work and they rely on AI. There are many cases coming out of the courts, state and federal, where lawyers have been caught using AI for their legal briefs. Yeah. And the AI has cited to a case that is not, it doesn't exist. And AI has just made it up. And so I think this is an important lesson for everyone, whether you're in law or not, that AI has a real benefit and use in our society, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to do the work in developing all of the skills that you need to develop for your industry. Right. I think AI is used as something that can make things faster, more convenient, right, easier, as you mentioned, and also elevate the work that we're doing. But if you don't have the necessary skills, then you can really get into some big trouble.
Right, right. Thank you for sharing that insight, and I think you're completely right. And Rabeea, lastly, what do you hope people will remember the most about your work and service?
Oh, wow. I've never had anyone ask me that. That's a great question. I really hope that they recognize that I am a child of an immigrant. I was born and raised here in America, Muslim, Pakistani American woman who has contributed and worked very hard for the greater community in Texas.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rabeea. And you have inspired me, and I'm sure anyone that's watching the show is going to be inspired by your journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hum TV, for providing us with this platform. And thank you to our sponsors for sponsoring the show. See you next time with a new episode and a new guest.